Hi, it's Brooke again. I'm the RHS Go Center mentor, and today I wanted to talk about another struggle that students have been having in the shift of virtual learning, and that is note-taking and critical listening. Now, you might be thinking, why are we talking about this in the Go Center? Well, it's important that you foundationalize these skills before going into college, but what I've noticed is if you don't already have a good foundation in these skills, the shift to virtual learning has made it a lot harder to stay on top of your coursework. And so I've called this AKA what you haven't had to do in high school. And that's pretty true. I remember whenever I was in high school, I never really did a lot of note taking and I didn't really critical listen. And that made it kind of hard whenever I got to college and had to learn how to study and listen in class on my own without the aid of homework assignments and um, review sheets and all kinds of materials that teachers tend to give you in high school. So I thought it would be valuable to kind of go over these skills and ways to kind of work on them. So by the time you get into your first semester in college, you're prepared, and maybe even help you finish out your semesters in high school with the shift to virtual learning. So it's important to kind of take a minute and reflect on how you would define your current note-taking skills. Do you have them at all? Do you have good note-taking skills? Do you think that you might have poor note-taking skills? Is it kind of just, when someone says something important, you jot it down in this gigantic notebook filled with all of your classes? Are things neatly organized? Are they legible? So kind of like self-reflect and think about what are your current note-taking skills, and try and think of times where you've tried to practice good note-taking skills. And what about critical listening? Do you know what this is? And do you practice critical listening in class? Or is it more of kind of dozing off when the teacher is talking? Critical listening has become predominantly harder with this virtual learning, and I can attest to this. I am still in college and I am finishing out my senior year, and in these past 2 semesters of virtual learning, it has been very hard to pay attention whenever I'm in the comfort of my own room, in the comfort of my own home, or when there's distractions like roommates, or maybe in your case, brothers and sisters or parents, dogs, cats, whatever it is. It's hard to stay focused. So let's learn some skills to try and readjust and keep our focus in class so we can do well. So there are 2 types of listening. There's active listening and passive listening. Active listening is this mindful hearing, and you're always trying to comprehend what the speaker is trying to convey to you. You're trying to find the deeper meaning, you're trying to make connections to things they have said previously, and you're doing this all while they're talking. Your brain is working, right? You're putting information together. Passive listening is when you're sitting there and you hear them, but you're not really digesting anything that they're saying. It's just kind of going in one ear, out the other. And I know this is really easy to do in high school. I remember having to get up every day at 6 in the morning and get to school by 7 and not get done till 3. And they're just really long days. It's hard to keep your mind going. And so a lot of times we fall into passive listening where we're hearing it and we actually might think that we're listening, but it's really just going in one ear and out the other. And it's not really staying. And again, during virtual learning, I completely understand that it's so easy to fall in passive listening with all of the distractions we find at home. But what we really want to do is get into active listening. We want to engage our minds whenever we're being spoke to by our teachers, by our professors. We want to have a good connectivity level. And this is how you are connected with the world and how you are actively participating with the goal of problem solving and with others and with the professor or with your teacher. How are you participating in class? How are you participating in lecture? And how connected are you with the lecture? How connected with the content are you? Are you more connected with the distractions around you? And you also want to have a good mental approach. This is going to help you stay in active listening. this is really hard to do sometimes. It's the shape your brain, fake it till you make it kind of approach, right? Some days we're like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm just drained. I do not want to go to school. I do not want to go to work. I do not want to put in my my undergrad applications. I don't want to look up those scholarship listings. I'm just so tired, right? And it makes it a lot harder to complete these things when we're sitting in that mindset. It's very negative, and it just keeps us away from doing it. So if you catch yourself in that trap, one thing to do is stop and tell yourself, even if it feels so fake, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. Whenever I really don't want to go to class or submit some application or do some homework or whatever responsibility I may have, I sit there for a second and I literally recite that I want to do it over and over again until I feel a little shift in my mood, a little shift in how I feel about it. And I don't let myself sit in that negative space. And it's really hard to do, but I promise trying to work on shifting your mental approach is going to help you physically be connected to lecture or to the responsibilities that you're trying to do. As graduating seniors, if that's who you are listening to this, there's a lot on your plate. College applications, maybe you're dipping your toe into the professional world and you're trying to look at job applications and trying to spruce up your resume. You're also trying to graduate with a good GPA, and you're also trying to stay connected with your friends and enjoy the last semester that you might have. You're also trying to stay on top of graduation requirements, and you're also trying to maybe stay in your extracurriculars, compete in things, UIL events. There is a lot on high schoolers' plates. So it's really important that we learn how to be active and be connected with our schoolwork, because it's really easy to get lost in the stress of it all. So what are some tips for this? How do we attain active listening? So I kind of break these down into 3 sections: before, during, and after class. This is going to be a strategy that is going to be super helpful for you in college, and hopefully even helpful for you now if you're still in high school. So before you go to class, you want to do all of your assigned stuff before you get to class. And this is sometimes a lot easier to do in high school because you have due dates, right, for homework. So you're kind of forced to complete these readings, complete these homework assignments before you get to class because they're due and you're going to grade them. Well, in college, a lot of times you don't have homework. And so you're just assigned a section of reading before class, and that you're going to be going over in class. Now, the thing is a lot of students take this as, oh, this is what we're going to be learning about today in class. But what you really want to do is have already read the chapters that are assigned for you before you go into class. This is going to help keep you actively engaged. When you're lost and confused and don't really understand information that's being taught to you, it's really easy to disconnect yourself because it's causing a lot of cognitive dissonance. You don't really understand, it's making you feel uncomfortable, you're tired, and so you just kind of choose to shift into that passive listening mindset. But if you know what the information is that's being talked about, you kind of start to get excited. And neurons start firing in your brain. You're starting to make connections with the material being taught. You might be able to have better understanding of a topic you didn't really understand when you read it, but you knew about. So reading the assignments, doing your homework, and actually doing your homework, not copying your friends, is going to help you do better in the class. And it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. Because if you can read before you go to class, then when you get to class and that information is being taught to you, maybe you actually did your homework and you spent time really trying to understand the homework, not just trying to get the right answer. And then you get to class and it's being taught about, this is going to strengthen these connections in your brain, and that's how we learn. So whenever we learn something, we have this connection made in our brain. And then whenever it's being taught to us again, it strengthens because we're recalling it. The more we recall information, the stronger that connection becomes. And so it's going to be really easy to recall it later on when, let's say, you're taking a test. So doing your stuff before class and really paying attention to it is really going to help you stick into that active mindset, and it's also going to help you get better grades. Have your materials ready is another big thing. Always come to class and try and stay organized. Have the books you might need, and have all of your homework assignments in front of you. And when you come to class in college, make sure that you know what chapters you're going to be going over. And again, having done step 1, this is going to be really easy. Step number 3 is sleep, and this is a big one. In high school, I remember I didn't really get a whole lot of sleep because I was so busy, and I was also just trying to, be a high school student and have fun. But in college, with the freedom that you have, it's really easy to just stay up all night and go hang out in common areas in the dorm or chat with your roommate all night. Eat sweets and watch Netflix all night because there's no one really there to tell you not to. But sleep is so important. This is going to help keep your mind fresh and alert. It's going to help you feel better and stay on top of all the responsibilities that you need to do. And again, like I had mentioned earlier, I know being high school seniors, there's a lot on your plate. So it's going to be very, very important that you're keeping 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night to keep your mind as alert as possible. And you also want to keep track of attendance. This is a lot easier to do in high school. When you get to college, no one's really going to be telling you how much class you've missed, and a lot of times attendance is required. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of attendance. If attendance isn't required, it's also important to know what stuff were you going over? What did you miss? And make sure that you're staying on top of that material before going to the next class. That way you don't get behind. And this can be important in high school as well. Definitely if you miss a virtual lecture. It's a lot harder to kind of ask questions and get that one-on-one assistance with material you might not have really understood whenever we're virtual. So it's really important that you're keeping track of all of the classes that you have missed and all the classes that you've attended and what's required in each class. What have you done in each class? So you make sure that you are on top of the information that is being covered. During class, you want to make sure that, again, you're actively engaging with the material. You're practicing active listening skills. So this is going to be done by taking notes and engaging with the class discussion, asking questions, jotting down questions to talk to your teacher about if you can't ask them right then. All of this is making sure that you are staying on top of the information that is being given to you and that you are staying present in the discussion and in the lecture. So taking notes and writing questions and maybe jotting graphs and diagrams, all of this stuff is going to keep you connected with the material. And it's also going to give you physical contact with material. What I mean by that is it's giving you a kinesthetic way of working with material, which helps improve memory and concentration. And like I had mentioned earlier, maintaining a positive attitude is going to help you. There's this theory in energy psychology that the way you think and how you view things is going to shape your experience with them. And it can be contradictory to how some people view feelings and experiences, but it is very true. If you think that you're not going to like something and that's the mindset you're sitting in, you're more than likely not going to have a very good experience with it. So try and stay positive. If you just hate pre-cal and you cannot stand it, maybe it's time to stop telling yourself that and start telling yourself that, you know what, it's not that bad until you believe it, even if you're faking it. And you want to go to class with a mindset to learn. And this is going to help you as well. You're not just going to class to go to class. The whole point of school is that you learn information. And the quicker you can come to that understanding, the easier college is going to be for you, the easier high school is going to be for you. And I promise you, the information that you learn will help you later on. I know that I didn't really pay attention into my algebra classes in high school. When I had to take algebra when I got to college, it showed. So I really wish that I had paid more attention to algebra whenever I was in high school. But I did pay attention to my English classes and my writing skills, and that showed. So when it came time for writing speeches or writing essays or term papers, it was a lot easier to complete those assignments because I paid attention in high school and I had foundational knowledge going in, and it showed in my grades. After class, you want to make sure that you're reviewing your material. So when you get home, make sure you go back over your notes throughout the day. Go back over what you learned in each class, even if it's just for a total of 30 minutes. Just sit down and kind of reflect on the day. This is really important for you to do in college because sometimes you will only have classes once or twice a week. So it's important that you take time to review the material that you learned because it could be a lot of material and it could be only a few times a week that you go over it. So go over your homework, go over your notes, and start building this practice when you get to college. It's a little easier to do. And you want to compare with a reliable classmate. If you can work on this in high school, it's going to help you a lot in college. Making your class friends is super, super valuable. And so if you really didn't understand something and you know that you have a reliable classmate who is there, maybe you can talk with them and ask, hey, did you understand this? Or how did you understand this versus how I understood it? Maybe you can explain it to me a little bit better. Or maybe you missed class and you can talk to that friend about what you missed. You also might want to self-test. Don't just reread your notes. Take your notes and make a self-test, or have a friend make a self-test and then take it and see what information you really don't understand. Sometimes you might think you really understand something because you read it over so many times, but when it comes to actively testing yourself, you might be surprised. I've had to take in self-testing a lot because the first time I did it, I was like, oh wow, I really don't know this as well as I thought I did. So self-testing is a great way to actively engage with the material, to review, as well as let you know what you really do understand and what you don't. So now we want to, we've talked about note-taking as a way to engage in critical listening and active listening and to keep us focused. But there's a difference between jotting down every single word and actually taking good notes. And I'm going to go over kind of what that is. So bad notes is the best way to learning what bad notes are is the best way to know what good notes are. So bad notes is writing without listening. If you are just jotting down what's on the PowerPoint or what's written on the board, and you're not really listening to what is being said, this is not effective note-taking. A lot of the time, what is being said is going to be the most important. Whatever the teacher or professor is spending their breath on is going to be the important information. So make sure that's what you're writing down and listening for. Mistaking note-taking for highlighting entire text, that's a big one. If you are a highlighter in the book, make sure you're only highlighting the important information and your entire book is not now highlighter yellow. You want to be taking the narrowed down to the point main idea information when it comes to note-taking and highlighting. And that kind of combines with the third point, which is noting down everything. You don't want to do that either. That's not really going to help you narrow down to study. And you don't want to, you want to be topic specific. You want to have organization in your notes. You want to understand what these notes are connected to and how it's connecting to other information. You don't want to just jot something down and have to look at it later and not have any idea what that was referring to. And not taking notes at all is bad note taking. I understand in high school it's really easy to not do notes. I don't believe I did a whole lot of note taking in high school, or at least I don't, remember it, but I know that I have in college. It's so important that you can develop good note-taking skills to be successful in college. So I have some examples. They're a little blurry, but we're gonna talk about why these are good and why these are bad. This example here, although it's kind of hard to read because it's blurry, isn't a good example. If you thought it wasn't a good example and you're thinking it's because it's just too much verbiage, you would be correct. There's just way too much information on this book. It looks like literally someone copied a textbook on here. And there's not really good division on the topics. So you want to make sure your notes are to the point, easy to read, with summaries and main ideas here and there, and general body points throughout. And you don't want to copy down the entire textbook. And by the way, if you didn't notice, all of this is just for the intro of whatever this person was taking notes for. So this is just way too much information. This is an example of beautiful note-taking. It's very clear to read, and it is categorized by topic. And it's to the point. It's easy to understand what it's talking about and what everything relates to and how it connects to each other. This is bad. This book looks like a coloring book. This is not what you want to do, and this is not what your highlighting should look like. This is way too much orange on the sheet, and pretty much what this is saying is that everything in this book is important and you need to know every single word. And while, yes, you want to be able to understand your textbooks thoroughly, you might not need to be able to recite every single word. This is a little bit more time consuming, but it is a good note-taking idea. While it doesn't have to be as pretty, I think this style of note-taking is very effective. It tells you what the lecture is. It tells you what topics are that you talked about and gives you points off of those. What the big idea is over all of the information that you talked about. So you're summarizing it, and then you actually have a summary. And you have all these different ways that you're connecting the information, but you're also able to separate it off of topic and be specific. This is a great way of taking notes. This is a good way of taking notes as well. This is called the Cornell style, which we'll go over in a minute. But it's colorful, it's visually appealing, and it gives you graphs and visuals and a summary as well. It gives you the topics and notes based off of those topics in a summary. So this is a great way of taking notes as well. This style of note taking it hurts my head. And this is how a lot of people take notes, and this is what you want to avoid doing. Imagine having to study for a test and going back to this. How are you going to what does this mean? This isn't going to tell you anything about what you learned in class on 4/15/05. So make sure that you are taking notes that make sense and that follow a topic, that follow a flow of information, and that give you more than just one line of notes. Here's another Cornell style notes, which gives you a summary, the topic on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, a little information about the topic. This is really well organized and easy to refer back to later. So if you're studying and you need to know something about problems after World War I, you can easily find that information on this style of note-taking. So now that we kind of know what good and bad notes look like, I'm going to show you some different methods that you can use for note-taking. So the last example of the good and bad notes I showed you was the Cornell style. So this is where you have study cues, so the overall topic, overarching topic, what you're talking about, and then those notes on the right-hand side of that topic. And at the very bottom, a summary of all of the information that you talked about in class. That way you're able to wrap all of the information up nicely with a little bow. This builds in critical thinking and self-testing methods for the future, and it gives you easy review of the material. The mapping method, this is really good for things that have multiple parts, right? Processes like biology. I made so many of these like little mapping flow charts in my bio classes in college because it's a really easy and visual way to understand how topics flow from each other. And when you're taking a test, it's kind of easy to picture the map later on, the more you've drawn it or the more you've gone over it. So you're able to see what the main topic is and how the subpoints and subtopics relate to it. There's an outline style, and this is where you have your main topic, subtopic, and supporting facts and details, and you might have examples falling off of that. This is a great way to see flow of information and stay organized within your material. Another way to do is to take your notes from the book and then later on combine your notes from lecture. So as you can see on this example, the black writing is from in class. This is notes that what the professor said. This is how you, or the teacher said. This is how you can make sure that you're actually listening to what is being said and not just writing what's on the PowerPoint. I took my notes before I went into class, and then when I was in class, I was able to write what the professor was spending the most time about, what was the most important, by putting sticky notes on the page or by highlighting certain things that were talked about a lot, or by just adding little notes off to the side. And so later on, when I went back to study, it was really easy to realize what information I needed to focus most on. And as you can see on some of them, I asterisked and wrote exam. And that's because the professor said, hey, this is going to be on the exam. So when you don't get a review, and a lot of the times in college you don't, that was going to be really helpful for me to go back and narrow down what information I really needed to focus on. So if you are note-taking from reading, here are some tips to kind of help make sure that you're being thorough. You want to use the table of contents as an outline. The table of contents is telling you, this is what's important, this is what we're going over in this chapter. So that's how you can kind of construct your own outline. You want to pay attention to sections as well as after this chapter I can. A lot of times teachers will have teaching objectives in their syllabus. Professors have this as well, that's telling you this is what we want you to be able to do after this class. And so you want to pay attention to that because that's what usually professors and teachers are building their tests over. Any bold or italic words are usually important, and anything that is repeated throughout the text. So if there's a lot of ideas that are maybe being written about in several different ways and talked about a lot throughout the chapter, throughout the book, this is going to be an important idea, and you're going to want to make sure you understand it. Any detailed statistics or numbers that are brought up or that your teacher notes are important. And then any after chapter questions and chapter summaries are going to be helpful for you as well. And so again, I just want to go over the importance of proper note taking now that we have a lot of tools and skills in our toolbox to do well. So college courses, they rely heavily on lectures. And a lot of times you don't have study guides, you don't have homework, and you don't really have anyone there holding your hand. And while sometimes college classes, yes, can be pretty easy, they also can be really content heavy, which means that you're being tested over 4, 5, or even 6 chapters of information without a review, and you're having to figure out which of that information is important. And so this is really going to be where your note-taking skills are going to come into play, because you want to make sure that you have paid attention to the right information and that you have enough information on the information that you're going to be tested about. And with the shift to virtual learning, a lot of students have realized where they where their note-taking and critical listening skills fall. Virtual learning is kind of a taste of what college is like, in the sense that it's self-paced and it's really up to you to do your learning, because you don't have someone right there in front of you making you do your assignments. If you're struggling with this now, start implementing these tips and tricks into your high school routine to help you whenever you get into college. And if you aren't struggling with them, I still recommend working on it now. Learning comes from reinforcement of material as well, and that requires good notes and good listening skills. So at the very minimum, this is just going to help you get better grades. And different classes are always going to have different ways to learn, so knowing different ways to take notes is going to be important for you as well. I mentioned earlier the mapping style is something I use frequently within my biology classes. But I use Cornell style notes and the outline style notes very, very frequently in a lot of my psychology classes, because I'm a psychology major. Because of the way the information was being presented, that was the easiest way to take notes. So being familiar with different note-taking styles might help you succeed as well. But overall, these are just going to help you be a better student and be more equipped to succeed in whatever area you are trying to succeed in, whether that's your high school classes, whether that's your first semester in college, whether that's tackling virtual learning. Hopefully these will help you just feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more prepared. And feel free to leave comments or email me if there are any topics that you want me to go over that you're struggling with during the shift to virtual learning, or something you might be worried about when it comes to transitioning into college. And I'd be more than happy to post more of these YouTube videos going over these skills. But I hope everyone has happy holidays, and as always, I have the appointment link listed in the description below, as well as our social media links and my email. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching.